Hey everyone, so in this video I'm just going to be going through draft mode in arenas and kind of explaining to all of you how I choose my attack team. A lot of it has to do with what I see on defense, and then things always end up changing based on the characters that come up. The first toon I always try to pull for is Dr. Stevens, just because of his AP gains, especially in the draft arena because no mods come into play and no leadership skill comes into play. The downside with draft mode is that although toons are maxed out, they do have whatever bound weapon that they come with, but it's locked as the basic weapon, which is pretty annoying. Next, when I look at the toons available, I'm not seeing anything really flashy that I need. If I didn't have Dr. Stevens, I might have picked up Gao, but because I do, I'm going to go with Arav next as my damage dealer, because once he starts to rush, he doesn't stop rushing, and based on the defensive teams that I've seen, there are no angels, meaning my team's not going to be exhausted. The next toon to choose is a little difficult to decide upon because Mercer's a pretty good character, comes with a stun weapon, also when he rushes can stun up to 3 enemies, only 66 AP, does decent damage. Then we have Raven, active skill elusive so the enemy can't gain any natural AP, but I want to go with Xander because Xander can not only disarm the enemy, but he can activate my Dr. Stevens on the first turn, making him an invaluable toon because I should be able to rush my Arav on the second turn just with this triple combination that I have at the moment. This next choice is not an obvious choice to make. Of the 6 toons that I have, Clementine would be good if leadership skills would count. Raven, as I mentioned, has elusive as her active skill, which makes her to be very effective. Zachary is a great control toon. When he rushes, 1000 maim damage, AP down to all, and you recover from all penalties, and an active stun. Mia, of course, is an Outlast toon that can revive on her rush and active skill, so she's kind of like an anchor toon. Another Dr. Stevens, but I don't really need that. And then Harper, of course. So Harper only has like 58 AP, I think. When she rushes, it's minus 50 attack and defense to the enemy, which could be really effective on a team like this, where I'm trying to use damage from Arav, but because there are no mods and the weapons are all natural, any type of attack buff or defense down is definitely welcome, especially when facing off against these S-class characters. The main fear with running some of these 6-star toons is that S-class characters might be able to one-shot them, but overall I think Harper is my best option for the defense and attack down, and she comes with a natural stun weapon. Usually in arenas, I kind of like going with characters that don't have bound weapons, because then you can equip whatever perfect weapon that you've made up, or clever weapon. So like if I were to have chosen Mia, I could have given her the team player weapon from the season store, and that would have given everyone plus 15% attack, as well as plus 35 crit. But instead I'm going with Harper because I need this overall control and this opportunity to bring the opponent's attack and defense down so that my Arav can hopefully do enough damage to kill the enemy. Now, the last toon to choose is just an obvious choice. Whenever I see a princess, I always grab her. Sometimes I have 3 princesses on the same team, and I am ecstatic about that because her kit is just perfect. It is great even in draft mode because on turn 2, you can normalize the enemy and taunt them into princess, which will both boost her attack because of Berserker and her weapon, as well as help her gain AP, so she might be able to rush and deal line damage on the second or third turn, depending on the type of team that you're running. Rule of thumb for arenas, if you want to maximize your points, you attack the last 5 enemies. So if you scroll all the way to the right, start from the left and go to the right, and this is how you will maximize the number of points that you have. I would say draft arena is one of the most interesting arenas, but also one of the most difficult ones because you have so little control over the situation. And what I mean by that is you don't know what characters are going to come up in your pool of characters. So you could end up with 5 amazing characters, or you could end up with 5 really, really, really weak characters. And what you need to remember in draft mode is that you always want to use single tickets. In draft arena, you don't have any characters that'll ever be exhausted in endurance mode because you're always drafting a new team from a different pool. It also means by just using one ticket at a time, you won't be affected as much if you end up with a really, really bad roster. You might lose some points that way, but at least you didn't use 10 tickets and only got a small amount of points for the ×7 multiplier. Yes, single tickets take longer, and it could be more difficult because you're always playing with different characters, and if you're unfamiliar with them, it can be challenging to know how to combo them properly. Like the combo that I've been trying to use while attacking, I always want to use Harper. I always want to use a damage dealer, usually a Rov next, because I want to make sure that my AP from Dr. Stevens goes to those two characters. On the second turn, I can use Princess's active skill to help control the enemy a little bit, and sometimes if I use her active skill, I might be able to command rush her, because if another character has rushed her or attacked her, she'll have gained AP at that time. I just love using Princess because she offers so much control in a match, and she's a real safeguard to use. I think one of the most annoying parts with the team that I'm running right now is that my Dr. Stevens dies so easily because he has no mods and he has a basic weapon. So I'm obviously losing points because of that, but I do need to gain AP. Usually it's the team that rushes the fastest that wins. And especially in this arena where there are no leadership abilities and there's no mods, really any type of control that you can use on the first turn is extremely important. You can take control at the very beginning of a match and never let it go. Like when I kind of set up my defensive draft team, I try to keep in mind about what type of characters people are trying to pick up. So Angel, in my opinion, is a great toon to have on your defensive team. I would also say Priya with a double attack and rampage weapon is a great toon to use. As you see, like I sometimes have to run 6-star characters on my attack team, so these S-class characters have a chance of killing my 6-star characters. This of course means that I will get less points. Other things to remember when making a defensive team is that all characters on the attacking team have their bound weapons. So people are always trying to pick up toons like Princess, Priya, but Priya has a dazed weapon, for example. So just keeping in mind what different characters' weapons do in their natural state can definitely help you with creating a very synergetic defensive team. You don't want to add, any type of leadership toon to the lead position because that really doesn't matter much. All your toons are maxed in this stage, which is kind of nice, so you can kind of get an idea of how powerful they would be if you had all your veteran rings on them, if you had them completely maxed, if you had your special weapons on them. It just gives you a good idea for almost theory building your team, which I think is extremely important. I've been thinking as well that having a payback toon on the attack team would be pretty decent. Just thinking about it, if you had that in line with my Frost, for example, you don't know if the attacker is going to get a focus toon or not. So if they don't end up getting a focus toon, if they aren't able to taunt, let's say, my Frost as well as my Princess on the first turn, well, it could cause problems if someone tries to use an Arav Rush down the line. They'll end up triggering payback. And because my Shivas are maxed out 6-stars, it means they're more likely to be triggered because I've seen a number of S-class Shivas whose payback doesn't trigger just because of how high their defense is. So now I'm moving on to my second ticket, and I'm just trying to decide what my first character could be. I'm thinking Clem. She does a fair amount of damage on her rush. She does have a bound weapon, which is kind of disappointing, but I do like that when she rushes, I believe she removes positive effects. Trader, I like that he's kind of like a safeguard toon. He's a standalone toon that you can use. His active skill is extremely valuable with infection, and then his weapon, of course. I'm going to add Henyon as well as Sheila because of their control. So with Sheila, I have some healing, I have laceration, I'm giving her a stun weapon with team player. So all my other toons get a plus 15% attack and plus 35 crit chance boost. I have Henyon to help decapitate the enemy as well as apply bleed and stun. Right now with 2 toons infected, it kind of gives me an idea of who I need to control. I know that Princess on the defensive team would use Normalize and Taunt on the second turn, meaning I have to control her first. I'm just going to try and apply some more infection around. I'm hoping to kind of just infect this team to death. It's not always the quickest strategy, but it is effective. And in draft mode, if you can find something that's effective, use it. It is so difficult to make a very strong and consistent team that can win in 2 or 3 turns, for example, because there's just so much RNG involved, especially with which characters you actually end up having to draft from. Add in the 5 defensive teams that you end up facing, could all be vastly different. You never really know what you're going to pull on the defensive end. Right now in arenas, there's about 250 people in each arena, meaning there are so many different combinations that could show up. So like if we labeled the weakest players, so the ones with the least amount of points because their team grade is low, they might be A players, but then players who have a lot of maxed out S-class toons and stuff who have a high team grade, say like S19, they're labeled as Z players. So you could get a large mix of A, B, C, D, E, and even if you ended up one-turning all those teams, you could end up with less points than someone else if they ended up getting players around the Z, Y, X area. So it's all just kind of down to RNG and luck and chance. And sometimes RNG and luck and chance just completely doesn't work for you. Like in this case, for some reason, my game booted me out again, which has been like the second time in 2 days. And it's just kind of frustrating because when you're mid-battle and all of a sudden, like the game just resets on you, you kind of lose the opportunity and the flow of your match. So now as you see, I didn't end up picking up that last video with continuous film. My phone just stopped recording at that point and I had to delete some other videos. But this is still Draft Arenas. This is with an additional ticket. I've decided that the weeks where there's no war, that's going to have to be the weeks that I use a lot more arena tickets, because I do need to score well there if I plan on doing well in the league as a total. Like I know that the only way that I am going to maybe potentially get that Paragon mod is if I'm extremely lucky and if I play smart. So on war weekends, for example, I know I can get a fair number of war points. So I'm not worried as much about those weekends for moving up in leagues, but I am worried about the other weekends because as a free-to-play player, it's incredibly difficult to compete with players who are paying quite a bit of money. So I know that on the weeks where there is no war, I need to do really well in the other tournaments that are going on. So it might mean that every other week, I might not participate in a specific type of tournament, or at least I won't use extra cans and stuff because I know that the following week we have the same tournament. But if I don't have extra, then I know I'm going to fall back or stay in the same division. And my goal is to try and move up every week, or at least most weeks. I think that when I did the math, I have to move up every single week except for 1 week if I want to somehow make it to Diamond 3. The minimum, of course, is trying to make it to Platinum 3 because that would earn me enough to get my S-Class Jason. Again, I'm not a huge fan of how S-Class Jason is rewarded because now it makes every single week a grind. In past seasons, when you just needed season tokens, you could decide, okay, I don't need anything else from the season store. I'm going to save my tokens for the next season, for the next toon. But now you really have to manage your resources. You have to perform well in almost every single tournament to advance, especially because they nerfed the number of trophies that you got from raiding as well as from territory matches, so they have less of an impact. So you really have to focus on where your strengths and weaknesses are and identify when you're going to be in the promotion zone. So this would be like if 1 week you notice you have 20,000 solo trophies over the last place person who's in the promotion zone. Well, you might be able to ease off a little bit. Like, I'm not saying you can't go hard or you shouldn't still go hard, but you might be able to save yourself a few resources for the following week. Because with everyone having started out in Gold 1, only the people who are grinding a lot and performing well in tournaments will continue to advance. So it's getting more and more competitive, the higher you end up going. So if you can manage your position, if you can manage your resources, if you are very aware of where you need to be placed to actually move up, you might be able to squeak up an extra division just by playing smart. It might mean you have to sacrifice a tournament. You might not place first, second, third, top 10, maybe even top 50. It might give you a better opportunity to move up the following week because each week is more competitive. I'm actually really worried about in future weeks when I'm going to be against more spenders. Like I did end up getting promoted to gold 2, and it's mostly because I scored 500,000 points in WOC, so during war, and that was a huge number of solo trophies. So I got really lucky that we had war on the first week, so it helped move me up early. It actually had me place first in gold 1, so I got an additional 1,200 gold coins, which definitely helped because I ran out of a lot of gold coins because of WOC, where I used coins on rebuilding and on war cans, of course. So for these last 2 tickets that I use, I'm just going to put it at 2 times the speed. You guys have a general idea of how I pick my toons now. This is where I picked up 3 princesses, Henyon for decapitation, and I picked up Gao because his active skill is plus 60% AP to, I think it's 2 toons, which is the same as Dr. Stevens on his rush on turn 1. And I just think Gao is a pretty good toon to use in this case because he doesn't have a bound weapon, and I picked up Mia's weapon from the season store, so he's giving that plus 15% attack boost and plus 35 crit chance. The attack boost helps everyone out, of course, and the crit chance boost helps Henyon, who has Headhunter, so he's able to apply crosshairs to the enemy, so if they die under the state of crosshairs, it means that they become decapitated. As I mentioned, I really like his rush as well. It deals 2 attacks, but he has a double attack weapon that's bound to him, and he's able to apply stun to the enemy and 1 other, as well as I believe it's 1,000 bleed damage. So this is actually like one of my favorite teams that I've run in Draft Arena so far. Princess just offers so much control, it's ridiculous. It's especially helpful if someone has a toon like Shiva on defense, or Frost, or Princess, or really any other toon that isn't a leader toon. By using the normalize ability, it really gives you a huge advantage because you don't have toons commanding, you don't have toons paying back, you don't have toons using bide, you don't have toons being a human shield. It basically just neuters the toon completely, and without any mods, those toons are going to be taunted into Princess each and every time. So I guess the main points that I want you guys to take away from this video is that draft mode is extremely difficult. You never know what type of bucket you're going to get of what toons you're going to be able to pull. All you can really do is react to what's being given to you, as well as identifying what different defensive teams on the opponent's team, like what they end up doing, when they use their active skills, what their rushes are. If you can identify who's a payback toon or a bide toon, you know you need normalize. You might not get Princess as an option, but AJ might come up. So just understanding the different components of the team that you need to be successful, I think at least, is very important. And identifying weapons, as I mentioned, so even just popping on a team player weapon onto your team can be a huge advantage, because that additional 15% attack can be the difference between you killing the enemy and not killing the enemy. And I think some of the priority toons that you definitely want on your attack team would be Dr. Stevens or Gao, a command toon, Princess. I wouldn't say Priya as much, only because she has her day's weapon on her and you don't get her leadership skill anymore, so she doesn't work as well as other toons might without having, Dr. Stevens or Gao, as I mentioned, because if she's not able to rush, well, she's not doing as much damage as before. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and listening to my video. Let me know in the comment section below what you like and dislike about Draft Arena and kind of what your strategies are, if you're willing to share, of course. I know some people like keeping certain things private, and that is totally up to your own prerogative. And if you have any specific video requests, feel free to let me know as well. I've been trying to take as many requests as possible. It just takes time to make videos sometimes.